Hello and welcome to Compliance Culture, the podcast where we explore what it really takes to embed compliance in practice, not just on paper. I'm Lucinda Carney, CEO of Actus, and each episode will be unpacking how organisations can move beyond tick box compliance to build a culture of genuine accountability, trust, and ethical behaviour. We'll be joined by experts and leaders who are making compliance meaningful, from consumer duty and SMCR to training, performance and leadership. So if you're looking to bridge the gap between rules and real-world behaviour, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this week's Compliance Culture podcast. And this week I'm delighted to be joined by Karen Shenton from Create Solutions. Now, we've got to know each other well over the last 6 months or so, Karen, but not everybody might know you necessarily. So would you introduce yourself and also Create Solutions and what you're expert in?
Yeah, good morning, Lucinda. I'm Karen Shenton and I'm from a company called Create Solutions. We've been in the industry now for over 20 years, helping mainly the general insurance sector comply with the FCA regulations. But in addition to that, we also provide training and support to the industry. So that's what we do generally.
And that's how we met, through a shared customer, didn't we? And because you do the training for them and you've been supporting them with a whole range of compliance issues. But most recently, and the focus of this episode is on the consumer duty. And we're looking at this because consumer duty has come about 2 years on. I'm not claiming to be expert in it, although I know more about it than I did 6 months ago. 2 years on. And I guess from your point of view, Karen, when it was introduced 2 years ago, what would you say the journey has been and how are firms finding it?
Yeah, 2 years and how quickly those have passed. Yeah, let's take a little step back. 2 years ago, the consumer duty, we're just reaching the anniversary of 2 years since the consumer duty was introduced. At first, I would say that because it's a totally different way, it's a shift of mindset, new rules introduced, new ways of doing things. What's all this about? Was the question. How do we go about it? It applies generally all firms, so large and small, so proportionality is key. The questions asked were, do we have the right resource? Are we on the right track? Are we doing the right thing? But aren't we already treating our customers well? So what do we have to do? So it was the practicality of it that and knowing where to start and where to stop. But that is a key thing to mention here, is that you never stop with consumer duty. It is not a once and done piece of work. It's an ongoing improvement for your business. So 2 years ago, firms had to demonstrate that they were delivering good outcomes for the customers, and they had to examine the customer journey. Now, this was quite new for firms in that they had to map out the customer journey first of all. But the FCA generally, 2 years in now, there's been a lot of communication from the FCA, and they are very, very open, still very open. Looking back at the webinars and all the communications that they've put out and our conversations with them through our professional organisations, they are seeing better outcomes for customers. Now, it's 2 years. That is a long time in our world, in the insurance world, but it is still in its infancy stage, I would say. Firms have yet to embed the duty, and so it's an ongoing journey. Firms are getting better at identifying vulnerable customers. They are getting better at demonstrating what they do. Firms have had 2 years, two consumer duty board reports now that they've had to submit. So it is now beginning to embed the consumer duty. Lots of firms have done some really good work from what we've seen, but there are some common themes that are going through from our conversations with our clients as to where they seem to struggle, where the challenges are. So we can talk about those later.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of the FCA's focus, as an outsider, right? So I'm thinking I was involved because we've got software involved when the SMCR came out, and one of the things I found when working with firms was that it's almost like clarity evolved. People didn't start with clarity as to what was required in terms of this sort of thing. Was that the same with consumer duty? Are people really clear? I understand the point about outcomes that, and
Mm.
actually, in fairness, an outcome is a result of something you've done. So to get an outcome change in 2 years is pretty quick, I'd say, because that's the result of
Yeah.
of the labours you've put in. But has it evolved in terms of what the FCA is looking for? Do people have greater clarity as to what they need to do to be meeting the requirements of this duty?
Generally, I would say yes, but there is still some confusion in the market. I think this is all to do with proportionality. And generally, the smaller firms that have been in business for many, many years, they do a really good job for their customers. They don't have complaints. So they're saying, well, what's all this about? Why do we have to? Why is the consumer? It doesn't affect us. We provide good outcomes to our customers. But the demonstration of what you do, demonstration is key to consumer duty. A lot of firms do a really good job, but being able to demonstrate how it fits in with the consumer duty and what they've done and what they've changed is one of the difficulties that we're seeing. And that goes for the larger firms as well. It's the demonstration of what they're doing.
So, as a smaller firm, so what the FCA is saying is, yeah, they're not saying you're doing a bad job, but they're saying you should be looking to continuously improve and check you haven't got any blind spots in terms of this and make it measurable. Is that what they're saying? So you've got to be able to really make it demonstrable.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I was going to talk about the outcomes piece as one of my, I would say, takeaways from
Yeah.
today's session. But being able to evidence that you've delivered good outcomes to customers. But first of all, you need to be able to demonstrate that you've set those outcomes, that you understand those outcomes in the firm, and not just rely on data. So we can talk about those later on.
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of if we took a typical smaller business that you might work with, how might you help them with the clarification of outcomes comes? Because I suppose there's also you've got to benchmark. You can define where you want to go to. I see this a little bit like a goal,
Yeah,
isn't it? And then,
yeah.
but you need to know where you are currently. So you've got to get some metrics around it, I suppose, to a certain degree to be able to make it measurable.
Exactly. We've been working with firms now since the very start of Consumer Duty, from when it was first introduced, when firms had to do the plans, their implementation plans. So there was a lot of work to do then, but the emphasis is now on the continuous improvement and making sure that the wheels don't fall off the wagon, should we say. So in relation to the support that we give, so it could be a new firm applying for authorization, it could be a firm that has a network of appointed reps, it could be a wholesaler who distributes products, so that's another area, the distribution chain, a commercial broker, retail broker, loss assessor, etc. Now, this duty applies, it's an umbrella. I call it the umbrella piece of legislation. Everything hangs from one of those spokes on the umbrella of consumer duty.
Right.
And what we've got to do is make sure that those spokes aren't broken and that we don't have any holes in this umbrella. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. So, in relation to helping firms from the very start, understanding the regulations, how it applies to them, if it applies to them, and how it applies to them, the responsibilities of consumer duty in the firm, what it actually means to them and their staff on a day-to-day basis, and what do they have to actually do in relation to their procedures, their policies, their systems. There was a lot of stepping back in the business, and this is key. It's a continuous thing to step back and see it from a different view, the customer journey. The key is, what is the customer experiencing? Now, we talk about the outcomes, we talk about products and services, we talk about, product governance and fair value, customer understanding, customer support. But the key word that I think a lot of people have just kind of like forgotten, or have, it's not prominent, is, what is the customer experiencing? Now, one thing I would say for firms is to ask themselves that question. How you do it, there's various ways of doing it, but what is your customer experiencing? There is a rule, an FCA rule, that firms have to be able to demonstrate that they know what the customers are experiencing. So in relation to support, it's consumer duty policies, consumer duty journeys, mapping the customer journey, the training for staff at all levels from senior management, the reviewing of the policies, the procedures, the customer-facing documentation, the review of websites to make sure that they're clear, fair, and not misleading. So this is how we support firms. We provide external audits as well to make sure that firms stay on track.
So those metrics, I mean, I think outcomes is actually really tricky to measure, isn't it? A customer outcome. Because and so a lot of those things you have to a certain extent, or set targets around inputs, company inputs. So making sure that the marketing literature is easy to read. How have you managed to help firms actually get some outcome data about that sort of thing, or is that just an example? Because I mean, I think it is quite tricky, isn't it? Other than sort of surveys, are there any other sort of areas where people have managed to get outcome data?
Yeah, this is probably an area that most firms, I would say, have struggled with. They have lots and lots of data, but actually linking it and linking it back to the consumer duty and examining that data as well, and being able to prove that the actions that you've taken as a result and how it links to consumer duty and improving outcomes for customers. What we recommend firms do is to document how they go about their outcomes, monitoring their strategy. Firms do this in a number of ways. It could be an internal procedure document. So this is what we do as a firm. These are the outcomes that we've set for the forthcoming year. This is why we've set these outcomes. This is how we are going to monitor the outcomes. This is how we're going to test them, how we're going to monitor them, how we're going to report on them. Now, some firms do this. They could have it on Word documents, Excel spreadsheets. Many firms are really struggling with this because they've got Excel spreadsheets coming out their ears and trying to track it, especially, the larger firms as well as the smaller ones, trying to keep it the glue of it all, the glue of it all together to understand, well, what's this data actually telling us? Is it relevant? You can have too much data. That is key as well. So really examining the data, making sure it's relevant to the consumer duty, and being able to evidence that the board have challenged that data and improvements made, so you can conduct root cause analysis and understand where the problems are, why things are improving, why they're not improving. So in relation to the collation of this data and examination and reporting, and Lucinda, we've worked with you on this excellent tool, Actus Oversight, which is a really, really good program for helping firms keep track of their outcomes. So
because that's half the battle, isn't it? It's being able to see the data and make sense of it. Choose the right metrics, but then be able to see whether or not it's going in the right direction and going up or down or otherwise.
And that's exactly what this tool does. And it's a great tool for helping with consumer duty board reports, your management meetings every month, for the executive and non-executive directors to examine, and for you to feed back with staff, with staff as well, so they can understand how the business is doing as a whole in relation to the outcomes piece.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because so one of the people that we've been talking to about Actus Oversight, this is the person who was spending, I don't know, a number of hours, days, a month on collating spreadsheet, and only a small firm, but collating spreadsheet to do it properly. And then it suddenly sort of dawned on her and the boss that actually those people who were directly contacting the customer didn't necessarily understand their role. The people who can impact the customer data today, customer services or whatever, them, sales, they didn't really understand the consumer duty because we were reporting on it in a bit of a vacuum. So being able to make that transparent and make sure that the accountability, make sure it's visible, is got to be part of achieving the outcomes. Otherwise, you're just monitoring something for monitoring the state, can't you?
Yes, yeah.
So getting that balance. Are you tired of spreadsheets and struggling to stay on top of consumer duty? I'm Lucinda Carney, CEO of Actus Software. Actus Oversight simplifies compliance with real-time dashboards, clear metrics, and less manual admin. It helps you deliver better outcomes for customers while protecting your firm's reputation and reducing risk. Find out more at actus.co.uk/Actus Compliance Solutions. And maybe just staying with monitoring, because one of the things I hear about the board is the board report. And, it's great to be able to help people with the board report. But has the FCA defined what a good board report is? In your experience, Karen, what makes a good board report that a firm does?
Yeah, well, we've been helping firms through their consumer duty board reports. We've been holding their hands and guiding them through, because every business is different. And what the FCA are not keen on is seeing tick box processes and board reports. The worst thing you can possibly do in your board report is to say that you've done this and you haven't, just because another firm may have done it.
Right, yeah.
Got to be
So
real.
make sure it's real. Start with
Real,
making.
got to be real. And it's when you don't know, when it's quite new to you, it's quite tricky. But we've been working with firms and talking with them about their board report, reviewing them, going through them with them. And actually, when you have that conversation with them and you talk about the work that's gone on through the year, they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's consumer duty." It's going to take time. It's going to take time. Firms are doing the right things, but they're not necessarily equating it to consumer duty.
Yeah.
So it's a change in mindset. So there, I would definitely say don't put in something that you haven't done. If you haven't done something that you said you would do last year, then as long as you've got a reasonable explanation as to why, I would expect that the FCA are going to be calling in more board reports, consumer duty board reports. If I was the FCA, that was probably the first document I would ask to see if I was doing any investigation on a firm.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be the first document I'd ask to see, to review. It gives you, because it covers so many areas of a business, it's like you say, the umbrella piece of legislation. It gives you a really good understanding of the business. So make it your board report. You need to be able to attest, the board needs to attest that they are meeting the consumer duty outcomes at the end. It needs a signature and it needs to be signed off by the deadline, most of which were the end of July this year.
On that note, a few firms I'm talking to, they're sort of maybe adjusting. Is the 31st of July just because that's when the FCA sort of announced it?
Yeah, that was the first deadline for the first anniversary. Some firms did theirs earlier, so it's got to be on at least an annual basis. But a lot of firms, good practice, are doing theirs. They want to do theirs every 6 months or
Right, sort of
earlier.
rolling. So it's
Yeah.
it's a working document, maybe sort of.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it's a working document. And as the years go by, it should become easier, your consumer duty board report. It shouldn't be one of those, a task that, oh, we've got the board report to do this month. You should have your data, your MI, you should have stories to tell of things that you've done, things you've come up against, action you've taken throughout the year. And Actus Oversight, the tool that you have, Lucinda,
Together, yeah.
that tells a story. That actually tells a story. Anyone can pick that up and you can say, well, what's this firm doing? How serious are they about consumer duty? They've set their outcomes. This is why they've set their outcomes. This is the data that's gone in. This is what it's telling us or not telling us, and we need it to tell us. And this is the action that we've done. And as a result, better outcomes for customers. Here you go. So it's
got to be better business, right? I mean, it's not if you're giving better outcomes to customers, hopefully that you're going to retain those customers. They're going to come back to you to buy more product from you. So
Yeah.
it's got to be good business.
Yeah.
If you've done well.
So good business. And also, I mean, the FCA, I've talked about this for many years, is that they want to build trust in our industry. And trust is a big one. We've held webinars and seminars on this, and I think the financial services sector have suffered in the past. But the FCA have said, as a result of the Consumer Duty, that there is an increase in trust from the work that they've done and the stats and the data and the organisations that they're linking in with. They're seeing better outcomes. It is moving in the right direction. It's quite exciting, really. And it's a piece of regulation, I would say, that has been needed. And I always say to people, this is what's needed in other industries, not just financial services, in any industry.
Well, tracking being clear on what you're actually doing,
Yeah,
why you're doing it, and continuous
yeah.
improvement.
It's a good
Absolutely.
business tool,
It
good business
absolutely
tool,
is.
isn't it? And
Absolutely.
good outcomes protect your reputation and helps your business succeed, don't it? So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why some businesses they talk about
yeah,
things like net promoter scores would be their high level, their kind of
yeah.
rough
I mean,
guide, but you can still have that anyway in financial services.
oh, I mean, there's so many different indicators in how you can measure outcomes. I always remember someone saying, "Well, we don't have any complaints, so we're obviously delivering good outcomes, but that doesn't really tell you anything." There's a lot of data and reasons why. So we help firms understand what is relevant, the MI.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's really valid as well because you can't boil the ocean. You need to actually really filter down on what the most important metrics are and focus on doing a good job with those, probably on a rolling
Yeah,
cycle. You can't do everything in one year,
yeah,
and that circles
yeah,
right back to where we started. Is it's an
yeah.
ongoing
Yeah. And
program
in
for us.
relation to your outcomes, the worry is that firms can become overwhelmed with it, thinking they have to set hundreds and hundreds of outcomes.
Yeah.
Um, that's not the case. It may be that you want to, when you've examined your business and you see where things are not going as well as they should, these are the areas that we're going to work on.
Yes, for this year or this next 12
For
months.
this year,
And then,
we're going to concentrate on these 8 outcomes. This is
yeah,
what we want to do on our business, and this is how we're going to do it. And with the Actus oversight, that could be a really easy tool, especially for reporting on how the firm's doing and how it's progressing with those outcomes.
absolutely. So if anyone wants to know more about Actus Oversight, we'll put links in the show notes or come and talk to Karen or myself directly. But it's a dashboard that you can use for compliance monitoring. And one of them would be one for consumer duty and alerts you to this. So it's a real-time dashboard that you can kind of simplify, remove the spreadsheets. So Karen, just in terms of, there's a few things I picked up because from what you've said so far, and let's perhaps think about closing down with top tips. So certainly I've heard that we want this to be ongoing. We want it to be outcome focused, want to be really clear on what these things are. It needs to be taken seriously and not be a tick box exercise. So the board report, whatever's in the board report, needs to be thoroughly examined and signed off and attested to. So it needs to be real, not paid lip service to, is what you're wanting to talk to. Now, there are a couple of terms we've talked about outcomes, and outcomes are relatively difficult to overtly measure. So some of your metrics will need to be things that you're doing, but with the confidence that they will improve your outcomes. And I think things like, I guess, churn, retention
Yeah,
rate would be an indication that you're doing a
yeah,
good job for customers.
yeah.
You talked about root cause analysis. I've heard you talk about that before. Do you want to explain what you mean by that? Because that seems like a term that's coming up quite a lot with consumer
Yeah,
duty.
root cause analysis. Again, this is what the FCA. I mean, it's what we've been doing in our business. We probably haven't actually pulled it out, to give it focus. The FCA, in their ongoing work, are very, very keen to understand, as an example, root cause analysis. So say for instance a policy didn't pay out, or you have a particular type of policy where the declinatures are quite high. They're keen to see that the firm has examined, why is this happening? Why is it happening? Let's take it all the way back to the product design. Is it the product design? Is it the design of the product? Or is it that we're not giving the information, the customer's not understanding the information? Do we need to make it clearer? Do we need to make the exclusions clearer? Do we need to examine our communications, our documentation, or is it the design of the product?
So it's basically no
it not
sticking plaster approach. It's actually get down to fixing it at the root.
get to the root? Yeah,
yeah.
Get to the root, but evidence what you've done. Evidence what you've done there.
Would you see that that's so if you're a head of compliance or compliance manager in a firm, would you see that you've needed to analyze and done some root cause analysis before and put that within your board report? Or would you see that that's done as part of the board reflection on consumer duty?
It should be an ongoing process, ongoing. Now, as part of the role of for instance, the complaints department, they will be doing root cause analysis. You have to do root cause analysis. But this is more root cause analysis on the business, on all other functions, on the customer journey.
Yeah.
Where you see indicators are going off saying things are going wrong here, let's have a look, stand back. Why are they going wrong? What's the root cause of this? It might be that nothing can be done as a result, but 9 times out of 10, it's something that can be fixed.
Yeah. And then you document that as part of the journey.
Document that, and also being able to evidence that as a firm you are avoiding foreseeable harm. So we're doing root cause analysis now because if we don't, there's foreseeable harm for customers if we don't put this right now. So that's
and that loops back round to if you're being investigated for something and you can see that root cause analysis either wasn't done or the recommendations weren't followed and you did something to improve it, then you're in more trouble. Whereas if you had done that, then there'd be some mitigation.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Karen. In terms of just closing down, any final top tips that you'd say for firms in relation to this?
Well, I could go on forever, but any firms who have a digital journey that they sell online, the FCA are going to be focusing on this digital journeys. Right. And how firms can make improvements, monitoring and testing. Make sure you have a documented process that you can talk about how you go about this. This is a rule. Firms do have to demonstrate that they're meeting the outcomes of customers. If you're having difficulty, then please do speak to us. Instead of working in vacuums, include all staff in the consumer duty. Eventually, it will just be business as usual, so increasing the skills of staff. Vulnerability is high on the FCA's agenda, always has been, and they are going to be concentrating, I believe, on customer understanding. So anything that you can do as a business in your outcomes, monitoring and testing for customer understanding, I would put that to the top of the agenda as well, and support. So
has that moved in a bit more from vulnerable customers, or is it linked to vulnerable customers?
It's linked to vulnerability, but generally, just all customers. Stand back, put yourself in the customer's shoes, ask yourself, what is the customer experiencing?
Yeah.
Demonstration is key. Demonstrate, tell stories, keep a log throughout the year of things that have gone, where you've stepped in, how it links to consumer duty. You're doing this, staff are doing this all the time. The firm's doing it all the time. Start to log it, and then it will become second nature.
And you've got the information. You think
good stories.
It's not a big job at the end of the year.
Exactly. So evidence board challenge, board challenge. Let's have a look at those dashboards. Let's have some evidence that the board have challenged it and asking questions as to
would that be sort of in the report itself? These are the changes we've made since we did it, or is it like minutes of a meeting? Yeah, just
both. I would definitely make sure that your management meetings, your senior management meetings as well, have a section on in relation to the consumer duty and how you're meeting the outcomes, what you're doing on consumer duty, ongoing basis.
Excellent. Okay. Great advice there and top tips. And it continues to be a journey. Obviously, Karen, people can come and seek your expert guidance, you and the team at Create. If they want to reach out to you, do you want to just let us know the website? We'll put this on the show notes so people can access you and reach out to you yourself.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And I just want to say well done to everybody who is listening to this. I'm sure that you've all been involved in the consumer duty in some format, whether it's from a compliance perspective or senior management role, but continue to do all the good work and reach out if you need any help. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on the Compliance Culture podcast, Karen. Thanks so much for joining me today on Compliance Culture. I hope you found our discussion was practical and insightful and helps us to see how we can all play a part in embedding genuine values-led compliance. If you'd like to know more about how Actus software can support organisations with performance accountability, consumer duty and SMCR compliance, why don't you visit us on actus.co.uk? The links are in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and share the podcast, and join me next time as we continue to explore what real compliance culture looks like in action.
The FCA expects firms to evidence continuous improvement. Just meeting the requirements of the consumer duty is not enough. Actus oversight allows you to assign clear ownership for consumer duty outcomes while tracking actions and evidencing improvements. This brings the duty to life, transforming compliance from a tick box exercise into a culture of continuous improvement.
Why don't you visit us on actus.co.uk?